I desperately need something to get my mind off the dreadful Yankees performance today. And thankfully, that help came in the second episode of The Captain, the Derek Jeter documentary. This episode focused on 1996 through 1998. 96, Jeter's first full-time season, the Yankees beat the Braves in the World Series. 97, they lose to the Indians in the ALDS. And then 1998, the 114-win team, one of the greatest teams in the history of baseball, that went on to sweep the Padres in that World Series. A lot of great stuff in this episode. Just want to take you through some of my favorite parts. First off, reveal at the beginning that the Yankees were actually thinking about sending Jeter to AAA at the beginning of 96 and also trading Mariano. Crazy to think how different things would have been, and thank God that did not happen, because that documentary is not made if Derek Jeter is in AAA and Mariano is off in God knows where, Seattle or who knows where. They also mentioned how Tony Fernandez, who I believe was the second baseman of the Yankees in spring training, broke his arm. And that's why they kept Derek Jeter on to be their shortstop. I don't know if Fernandez was the shortstop or the second baseman, but Tony Fernandez was the Drew Bledsoe. Like, he got injured, and Jeter came in to place him. And Jeter was talking about how he really thought that was the reason why they kept him, was because Tony Fernandez was out. Jeter comes in, has the wonderful 96. They mentioned the Jeffrey Meyer incident, which I love seeing Jeter have that swagger when he was talking about it. He was like, you know what, Tony should have jumped, and we would have beaten Baltimore anyway. It's so weird to have Jeter be publicly cocky, but that's what I like seeing here in this part of the documentary, seeing publicly cocky Jeter. And then, of course, the great 96 World Series using Outkast, Player Ball. This soundtrack is really good. And I'll get to a couple other song choices, but man, they've done such an excellent job picking some 90s hip-hop songs. I also like seeing Jeter talk about his nightlife. As soon as he won the World Series, everything changed, and he became the most attractive guy in New York City. And he was talking about how if phones were around, I would have lasted 3 years in Major League Baseball. And he was talking about how every night of the week he had a different club that he would go to. I also found it interesting that Dale Strawberry gave Jeter advice on how to deal with New York City, because if there's somebody who knows what that city can do to you, it's Dale Strawberry. Obviously, he understood it with the 86 Mets and all the stuff they had to go through. So I thought that was interesting. Look, if anything I wanted to hear from this documentary was hearing about Jeter's personal life. I didn't want to hear about every woman he slept with, but I was curious about some of the stuff that went on and his party life, because that was a thing that was talked about with Jeter. So I found that interesting. We also got our first glimpse of A-Rod, and talking about how they started their friendship, and there was a very interesting story. There was also some discussion about Nomar, because those were the big three shortstops back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Jeter, A-Rod, and Nomar. And there was a great story that there was a writer talking about how A-Rod was doing a lot of interviews with Jeter. And then in 97, he said, I'm not going to do any more interviews with Jeter, because there's this perception that Jeter is better than me. And I know that's not true. I'm better than Jeter, and I don't want to have that perception that Jeter's better than me and all that. And A-Rod immediately comes out and says, no, that wasn't true. That never happened. Immediately, I think A-Rod's lying, because we know A-Rod's history. We know the man, all he's done is lied. I mean, the man lied to everybody about steroids twice, at least. So I totally believe that A-Rod was jealous of Jeter and his success and all that. And I'm not saying, do I think A-Rod was a better player than Jeter? Yes, but I also... A-Rod, don't hide it. Just admit, you thought Jeter was, you thought you were better than Jeter, and you hate all the attention Jeter was getting. That's fine, but don't lie about it. We know you're a liar. We've seen constant evidence that all you do is lie. And there was an interesting part of the documentary, if we're going to talk about Jeter's truth-telling. There was a part of the documentary where they're talking about how David Wells, he and him there was rumors that he and David Wells got into a fight. And Jeter immediately was like, that wasn't true, and he was talking about how he went to all the he went to the reporters, so that wasn't true. He rounded up the guys and said, hey, did any of you tell this reporter, Buster Olney, about that I got into this fight with him? And they all said, no, that wasn't true. So Jeter's talking about that. I never got into a fight with David Wells. But the one guy who wasn't interviewed about it was David Wells. David Wells was not in this documentary, and Jeter does have control over this. So I'm wondering, did that happen in Jeter's... Because we think of Jeter being a truthful guy, but I would have loved to have heard what David Wells thought about that. I'd love to hear maybe David Wells come out and said, no, actually, we didn't do a little tussle. If I had to guess, probably not. But I was wondering, David Wells is also involved in the story. Let's hear from David Wells' side. And then also probably the highlight of the documentary for me was the 4 or 5 minutes where they go deep on the 1998 regular season, all the highlights of it, set to Baba O'Reilly by The Who, which is one of my favorite songs. So to see the Armando Benitez brawl, the Orioles-Yankees brawl in 98, set to Baba O'Reilly was awesome. And then, of course, it showed all the highlights of, Tino's Grand Slam, Scott Brosius' home run in Game 3 of that World Series. That was cool. And then it ends with Jeter talking about how the beginning of his feud with the Yankees front office, with Steinbrenner, how they didn't want to pay him $5 million in arbitration until eventually the judge decided yes. how he thought Cashman didn't value him as much as he should have. So that I thought was interesting, but I also realized there's probably not going to be much that comes out of that, because it's not like, oh wow, this is when the beginning of the Yankees and Jeter's relationship faltered, because Jeter never left the Yankees. So it wasn't like, obviously maybe the relationship between him and Cashman and Steinbrenner wasn't great, but at the same time, it wasn't that terrible because Jeter never left the Yankees. Jeter could have many chances have left the Yankees, and he didn't. So that it's a little interesting, but I also realized there's not much point to it, because in the end, nothing's really going to happen. Also, I thought it was really sad seeing Jesus and Mero get interviewed. Just a few days after they break up and I see these guys get interviewed, it just absolutely broke my heart seeing that. I know they obviously couldn't edit that, but man, it was just awkward seeing those guys interviewing, knowing that they just broke up. But overall, another very enjoyable episode. At this point, I don't even know if this is going to be considered like an all-time great documentary. I've just enjoyed it. Okay, it's just personally, for me, this is my favorite era of the Yankees, late 90s, early 2000s Yankees, being covered, and it's just fun going back and reminiscing. As I'm watching the Yankees right now suffer tonight, it's fun going back and watching 96 and seeing Girardi's triple in Game 6 and Jim Leyritz's home run in Game 4 and the Yankees winning those titles in 96. And it was also interesting hearing Jeter talk about the pain that he went through in 97, losing, and how they had to fight back and be motivated for 98, and of course they just ran away with it in 98. So I thought that was very cool to see. But overall, it's just fun to watch this. As a Yankee fan, I don't know how many other baseball fans are going to enjoy it, but as a Yankees fan, it's just been fun to watch. I've really enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and I can't wait to see what else happens. That's it for now, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, like to see, make sure you subscribe down below. I'll be back tomorrow to break down the next Yankee game. Take care and God bless.